Did you ever save somebody's life? Here's the story. So, years ago, when I lived in New Jersey, I was out of work. I called it retired because I retired early. But we had snowstorms every 2 or 3 days, and I had a bunch of old people, and old people get real antsy about having their sidewalk shoveled. So every 2 or 3 days, I'm out there shoveling the people's sidewalks, and I'm outside, and on the inside they're leaving messages. How come you're cutting? How come you're shoveling his driveway? How come they were jerks? Anyway, so I'm under all this stress. I'm mowing. I'm shoveling everybody's sidewalks, and I'm outside, and I look down, ready to go down the back. I had a highway behind my house, River Road, and I see Charlie down there. Now I had shoveled both mine and his, and he's down there touching up our sidewalks and clearing. He has his drainage system for his gutters goes down the back underground. It comes out down by the lower road. So he's down there, and all of a sudden I feel like I got to poop. So I run in and I poop, and it's diarrhea. That's what I thought. It was all blood. So I come out and I yell next door to my neighbor. I tell her real quick what happened. She calls down to Charlie. Charlie comes up and they drive me over to the hospital. All right, it's not about me. All right, it's about the roommate. So a few things happened. They tried to give me blood. I told them I didn't want somebody else's blood. And well, anyway, they set me up with a room, and I'm sitting there, and they got me hooked up to all this equipment. And this guy comes in, and he's just moaning like, oh, oh, like that. So I'm like, all right, let's talk to him, see if he speaks English, and see what the hell's happening. So I said, what's going on? He goes, I just got out of getting all kinds of tests done. He says, I was here a month, maybe 6 months ago. They did a colonoscopy. They accidentally cut me somehow, or they infected me somehow. The infection went into my heart, and it ruined one of the valves, and they had to replace the valve with a pig valve. So now he says, I've been throwing up since 2 o'clock in the morning. He's been here 12 hours. So anyway, he's got in his hand, he's got a can of Sprite. And I said, oh, you're drinking Sprite? And he's in pain. And he goes, yeah, that stopped me from throwing up. I said, do you drink soda? He goes, no, I never drink soda. I said, you know, Sprite is the most gaseous soda. If you drink it straight out of the can without pouring it into a glass. I said, did you come over here with this pain in your chest? He goes, no, I come over here because I kept throwing up. And the doctor told me if I ever do that, that could be the pig valve failing. So I said, drink water. So he goes into the bathroom there, and he gets a glass. He puts water, and he's sitting there talking to me, and he's sipping. All of a sudden, I thought he was going to throw up. He didn't. He burped. And then he looks at me, and I go, it's gone. The pain is gone. I go, yeah. I said, yeah, Sprite is a really bad gaseous soda. You can't, anyway, you can't drink it if you don't know how to burp. And so he's talking to me. He's like waiting for his doctor to come in. So his doctor comes in, and he's telling me, yeah, that guy over here in this over on this bed, he got me to drink some water. I burped, and the pain is all gone now. And the doctor now pulls the curtain over, so I can't hear what they're saying after that. So the curtain comes back open. The doctor leaves, and the guy looks really sad at me. I said, what's going on? And he says, they think my pancreas shut down. I said, are you diabetic? He goes, yeah. I said, dude, you've been drinking Sprite soda since 2 o'clock this morning. And he goes, well, I said, there's sugar in there like you can't believe. So what's happening is he's drinking these Sprites. He's getting this pain in the chest from a gas bubble. And his sugar level is going. They're giving him more insulin. So right after I go through all that, I don't know if the doctor come by the door and heard me. He comes in. I said, Doc, I don't want to get involved, but he's been drinking sugary Sprite since 2 o'clock this morning, so he won't throw up anymore. Then he had the pain from the gas from the soda because he doesn't drink soda. I said, now basically, I got him drinking water. So the doctor's like, you got to be kidding me. I go, no, no, I don't know. You ask him. Because he told me, the patient tells me that his pancreas is shutting down because they can't control the sugar. So, I'm looking at the Sprite, and it's sugar. It's not sugar free. It's Sprite. So the doctor takes the can and he leaves. And then they come back in later, and the doctor says, we have to take blood again. They took blood like 2 hours before. Now I'm taking blood again, and then they leave, and then they come back in. And when the doctor comes back in, he's got a guy with him, and he says to the guy, he points to me, he says, thank this guy for saving that guy's life because you screwed up. And I'm like, oh, don't put me in this kind of position. This is the shit they used to do to me at work. This guy solved the problem. You should have. Blah, blah, blah. Here I am. I'm in the hospital. I have my own problems. And what it was is the guy was a dietitian. And when you come into the hospital, they're supposed to look at your chart. And if you order Sprite, they'll look at it and say, oh, this guy's diabetic. He can only have diet Sprite. Then the guy would have only had the gas problem, and I would have been done. Right? So anyway, the doctor's telling him, do you thank this man? I'm sitting there. And that's the worst position to be put into, when someone just springs it on you. And I'm laying there, and I got all these connections hooked up to me. I think they had the EKG hooked to me. Oh, no, they were feeding me intravenously because they were going to operate on me. Anyway, I had to wheel this thing around, and it would beep because the battery was bad on it. I won't get into, like I said, I can't get into too much of it. But anyway, yeah, so this guy, he stayed with me that first day, like from 2 o'clock that night. But the next morning, his wife's in there. She's thanking me. They're going home, and I'm sitting there. They have to go in me a second time because the doctor asked me if I was an alcoholic, if I drank a lot. I said, I only drink Pepsi. And he didn't believe me. So they went in with the camera in through my mouth, and then they said, you're in really good shape inside. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, we thought you were a really heavy drinker. I said, yeah, I drink Pepsi. I'm telling you the truth. And chocolate. I love chocolate. So then they went in through the back door. Doctor says, well, I was trying to save your dignity or something like that. They went in, and in my case, they found a polyp sitting on a vein. It broke, and that's why I was bleeding. And the stuff they gave me, which is for alcoholics, they get bleeding ulcers, people. That basically caused me to clot, so I didn't have to have someone else's blood. But back then, there was in the blood there was possible AIDS, and I didn't want AIDS because I was single, and I just didn't want AIDS. And I knew I was in fairly good shape. So then the doctor comes in after the operation. He's telling me what he found. I told him where I felt this pumping thing. Anyway, they didn't listen to anything I had to say. So I'm going home, and he sends me home, and I go back to my doctor. And my doctor puts me on an iron pill, which made me shit my brains out. And then I was talking to someone, and they said, yeah, iron pills do that. I cut it in half. Then when I went back to the doctor, I told him the whole story about shitting my brains out from the iron pills. He goes in the other room, makes a phone call. He comes back out, and he goes, cut the pill in half. I said, I'm way ahead of you. I'm way ahead of you. But that's my story. But the guy that was with me, they considered his pancreas had shut down, and he was going to die. And that's why he was in the room with me. And then I turned it around, and I was like, dude, you're drinking. Sprite is like, I think if you let it dehydrate, it's like a whole teaspoon or whatever of sugar. And they're pumping him up with insulin, trying to get it to stabilize. Meanwhile, he's sitting there drinking one Sprite after another and getting this bad gas bubble. And I'm like, dude, do you drink a lot of soda? Because the way he's guzzling this shit down, because he's nervous. And he goes, no. He goes, I said, do you know how to really burp? I said, can you burp when you want to? He goes, no. I said, dude, that's what that gas bubble is. So I said, drink some water. And he's laying there also. I thought he was going to throw up. I thought we were going to see the throwing up start again. But he burped, and he just stares at me and smiles. I'm like, holy shit. But then, the curtain got pulled over, and he looked sad again. I'm like, what? He goes, they think my pancreas shut down. I said, you're diabetic? He goes, yeah. I said, dude, you've been drinking Sprite since 2 o'clock this morning. And it was after 12 noon. Yeah, it was after lunchtime when they got me in the room. But it's so funny. And then he's drinking water because I told him to drink water. That's what the doctor told him to. He says, don't drink any more Sprite, drink water. And then they come in and they took his blood. And they already saw it was starting to drop. And like I said, he's saying, well, it's been nice meeting you. I said, son of a bitch, he's near death. Now he's going home ahead of me. I think that's it. All right, that's it.